My name is David Thompson, and at 58, I never imagined I would be forced to make the kind of decisions I'm making now. For most of my life, I took pride in being the one everyone could rely on, the one who always provided, the dependable father, husband, and provider. I worked hard to give my family the best life I could, sacrificing my own desires and needs to ensure they were taken care of. It wasn't always easy, but it felt worth it. After all, family comes first, right? I was proud to be able to support my wife, Lena, and our daughter, Ava. I thought that was what a father did. I never questioned it until recently when things began to shift, when the weight of being the constant, never-ending source of support began to feel heavier than I could carry. Ava, my only child, had always been the center of my world. From the moment she was born, I worked overtime, took on extra shifts, and put away every spare penny to ensure she would never want for anything. Designer clothes, vacations, a car when she turned 16, everything I thought a father should do for his daughter. I never held back, never said no when she asked for something. I thought I was doing the right thing, being the provider, being the protector. But as time passed, I noticed a change in her, a shift in how she viewed the world and how she viewed me. It wasn't just about being grateful anymore. It was about entitlement. Somewhere along the way, she stopped asking for help and started demanding it. She was 32 now, and the woman I'd raised no longer felt like my daughter, at least not the one I'd dreamed of giving everything to. She didn't care about hard work, about sacrifice. She cared about what I could do for her, what I could give her. She never once considered how much I had given over the years. She never asked if I could afford it, never asked if it was okay. Ava always expected things, and I never said no. I would give her the money for whatever she needed, whatever she wanted, because that's what I had been taught to do. But it wasn't enough. It never was. A few weeks ago, I noticed the pattern more clearly than ever before. Ava had recently come to me, asking for help with her rent again, but this time there was a tone in her voice that I couldn't ignore. It was sharp, demanding, as if it was her right to get this money from me. I had given her money last month, and the month before, and for the past year, always without question. But this time, something inside me shifted. I had saved, scrimped, and worked for decades to build up a comfortable retirement, but it seemed that Ava thought my savings were a never-ending pot she could dip into whenever she needed it. That wasn't the life I wanted for myself, and I had finally started to feel the weight of that realization. I wasn't sure if it was the growing resentment or the exhaustion of constantly being the one who had to fix things, but when she came to me last, I found myself hesitating. I was tired of being her ATM. I was tired of her never appreciating the sacrifices Lena and I had made. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about respect, and I felt like I had lost all of it from my own daughter. Then came Father's Day. I wasn't expecting anything too extravagant. Ava had always been the one to outdo herself when it came to gifts, expensive watches, trips to fancy restaurants, the latest tech gadgets. But this year, I felt like she was trying harder than usual to impress me. She said she had something special for me, something she'd spent a lot of time and effort on. I remember Lena and I were sitting at the kitchen table when the package arrived, just a few hours before we were set to have a quiet dinner together. "Looks like Ava sent something," I remarked, looking at the box on the doorstep. It wasn't particularly large, just the size of a shoebox, and it was delivered by courier. A special delivery, no less. Lena didn't seem as excited as I was. "David, be careful," she said, her voice sounding off. "Don't open it just yet." I could tell something was wrong. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, so I brushed it off. "It's fine, Lena. It's just a gift. What harm could it do?" I picked it up and brought it inside, shaking it gently to feel what might be inside. It didn't seem heavy, just a little rattling noise. Lena's expression remained concerned. "David, there's something off about this package. I don't know why, but it doesn't feel right." I ignored her warning, brushing it off. The last thing I wanted was to think the worst. But as I cut through the tape and opened the box, an overwhelming stench hit me, a mixture of something foul and pungent. I froze. The smell was unmistakable. Something was alive in there. "What in the world?" I muttered to myself, not quite believing what I was seeing. Inside the box, hidden beneath some packing materials, was a python, coiled and wriggling. It was a sight I'll never forget. The snake's cold, calculating eyes staring straight at me, its body shifting in response to my presence. It wasn't venomous, but the thought of having something so dangerous sitting in my living room made my blood run cold. Lena's face had gone as pale as a ghost. "David, don't open it. Call someone," she said, her voice shaky. I wasn't sure what to do, but I knew I had to act fast. I could feel the tension building in the room. This wasn't a harmless joke. It was a direct message, a form of intimidation. The idea that my daughter, the one I'd sacrificed everything for, could do something like this. It hit me harder than anything I could have imagined. I was supposed to be her rock, her protector, yet she was now actively trying to destroy everything I had built. My hands trembled as I dialed the authorities. The dispatcher assured me help was on the way. As I waited, the seconds felt like hours. I kept glancing at the box, at the snake, wondering what in the world could have motivated Ava to do this. Why was she punishing me this way? Why did she think she had the right to attack me in such a cruel, calculated manner? What had happened to the girl I raised, the one who used to draw me pictures and write me heartfelt cards on Father's Day? The police arrived soon after, followed by animal control. They carefully removed the snake, confirming it wasn't venomous, but the impact of this incident on me was already profound. I knew deep down that this wasn't just a random act of rebellion. This was malice, a cold, deliberate act meant to manipulate and scare me into submission. I didn't know what was worse, the fact that Ava had sent the snake, or the fact that she'd orchestrated this on Father's Day, of all days. Father's Day. A day I'd always looked forward to as a celebration of family, of the bond between parent and child. And now, I was left wondering what had gone wrong. What had happened to my daughter? The days that followed were some of the longest I've ever had to live through. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had broken inside me after the snake incident. I'd always thought that Ava's behavior was just a phase, some kind of youthful rebellion or misguided attempts at independence. I didn't want to believe that she could be capable of such malice, but as each hour passed, the reality started to settle in. Ava wasn't the child I raised anymore. She wasn't the little girl who once ran to me with a smile on her face, asking for help with her homework, or the teenager who'd hug me after every school event. She had become someone I hardly recognized. A person who seemed to care more about what she could take from me than what she could give, and someone who would go to any lengths to make me pay for not meeting her demands. The worst part of it was she had taken everything from me, my time, my money, my energy, and I had let her. For years, I gave her everything I had without question, without hesitation. I thought it was what a father should do. But now, it felt like all those years of sacrifices were just a prelude to the ultimate betrayal. My own daughter had sent me a snake, and I wasn't sure what hurt more, the snake itself or the fact that Ava believed she could manipulate me with something so cruel and twisted. I didn't speak to her for days after that. Not a single word. I didn't know what to say to her anymore. The phone calls I'd made to her immediately after the snake incident went unanswered, just like the ones I'd made over the past several months when she asked for help with her debts or living expenses. Ava had always been quick to call when she wanted something, but when it was time to have a serious conversation, she went quiet. That should have been a warning sign, but I ignored it, didn't I? I wanted to believe that she was just going through a rough patch, that one day she'd turn around, that everything would go back to the way it was before. I was an idiot for thinking that. But after the snake, something inside me shifted. It wasn't just the fact that she tried to scare me. It was that she had done it so intentionally, so coldly. There was no regret in her voice when she laughed over the phone, no sense of remorse. She was unapologetic. It was as if, in her mind, this was all justified. This was what she thought I deserved. I wasn't the father she loved anymore. I was just a means to an end. And that realization hit me harder than any snake could. I spent the next few days stewing in my thoughts, trying to figure out how things had gone so wrong. Lena noticed the change in me immediately. I'm not sure if it was the quiet tension in the house or the way I seemed lost in thought for hours at a time, but she was the first to speak up. She could always tell when something was eating at me. "David, what's going on?" she asked one night while we sat together on the couch, the television playing softly in the background, though neither of us was really watching it. "You've been quieter than usual." I took a deep breath. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to burden her with the weight of everything that had happened, but I knew she could see it in my face. She had been there when I'd built this life, this family, and she'd seen the way I worked for every penny, every sacrifice. She knew what Ava meant to me. "I don't know, Lena," I said, my voice strained. "I think I'm finally realizing something I should have seen a long time ago. I've been enabling Ava. I've been giving her everything she wants, but it's never enough. And I know that she's been using me, manipulating me. I've let her do it, Lena. I've let her take everything from me, and for what? So I could be the hero? So I could be the father who always comes through, no matter what. It's been a lie." Lena was silent for a long time after that. I could feel her eyes on me, searching my face as if she was trying to figure out where I was going with this. Finally she spoke, her voice soft but steady. "You've always been a good father, David, but sometimes being a good parent means saying no. It means setting boundaries even when it hurts. I think Ava needs to understand that." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I hadn't wanted to admit it, but Lena was right. She always was. I had allowed Ava to take advantage of my desire to be the perfect father. I had turned a blind eye to her faults, making excuses for her, believing that one day she would realize the sacrifices we made for her. But now I saw the truth, and it was uglier than I had ever imagined. The more I thought about it, the more it became clear to me. I had to stop enabling her. If I didn't, things would only get worse. She would continue to take from me, and eventually she would take everything. Not just my money, not just my energy, but my peace of mind, my dignity, my self-respect. I couldn't let that happen anymore. For the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of something in me I hadn't felt in years. The strength to set a boundary. The next morning, I made the decision to call our lawyer, Margaret Finch. I didn't know if it was the right move, but I knew it was the necessary one. Margaret had been our family lawyer for years, handling everything from our estate planning to tax issues. She was a professional, reliable, and discreet. If anyone could help me navigate the mess I was about to make, it was her. I spoke to her briefly on the phone, explaining the situation, and she agreed to meet with me that afternoon. I knew what I had to do. I needed to change my will. I needed to ensure that the inheritance I had worked so hard to build for Ava was protected, but not just handed over. It had to go into a trust for my grandchildren, Liam and Emma, so they could be provided for without Ava ever getting her hands on it. If she wasn't going to respect me, she didn't deserve access to the life I had worked for. But that wasn't enough. I couldn't just change the will. I had to make sure that she couldn't keep doing this to me, this emotional manipulation, these threats, this constant sense of entitlement. So I asked Margaret to file a restraining order. I couldn't let her continue to emotionally blackmail me, using the grandchildren as pawns in her sick game. It was a hard call to make, but once I made it, I felt a strange sense of relief. I had taken back control. I had finally stood up for myself, something I should have done years ago. Ava had crossed a line, and I was no longer going to let her drag me into her chaos. Later that day, as I sat in Margaret's office and signed the papers, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew this. I would no longer be a prisoner to Ava's demands. I would no longer be her safety net, her ATM, her emotional punching bag. That night, I sat down with Lena again. We didn't need to say much. She could see the relief in my face. We both knew that the road ahead would be difficult. Ava wasn't going to take this well, and the confrontation was inevitable. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was doing the right thing. The house felt quieter now, peaceful. The tension that had been hanging in the air for months had finally started to dissipate. The next morning, as I sipped my coffee, I knew that no matter what happened next, I had taken the necessary steps. I had stopped enabling her, and I was finally ready to live my life without being controlled by her manipulation. The days after I made the decision to change my will and seek legal protection from Ava were some of the most unsettling and intense I've ever experienced. I had expected some kind of relief, a sense of calm that would come with finally standing up for myself, but what I didn't anticipate was the sheer weight of what it meant to cut her off. For the first time in a long time, I felt the absence of my daughter in my life, like an emptiness that I couldn't fill, no matter how hard I tried. Ava had been a constant part of my existence for over 30 years, and now the space she left behind felt like a gaping hole in my heart. I wasn't just cutting her off financially, I was cutting off a part of myself. She had been the child I had devoted my life to. Every ounce of my energy, every paycheck, every decision had been made with her in mind. And yet, here I was, the father who had been pushed too far, the father who had no choice but to protect himself from the very person he had sacrificed everything for. Lena noticed the change in me immediately. She had always been the more level-headed one between the two of us, the one who saw things with a clear mind while I often got lost in my emotions. I could see the concern in her eyes whenever she looked at me, as though she was afraid I might break under the pressure of the decision I had made. I knew it was hard for her too. She had been by my side through it all, but she wasn't the one who had been manipulated for years. She wasn't the one whose daughter had treated them like a walking ATM. "David," she said one evening, her voice soft but firm, "are you sure about this? I know you've been through a lot, but cutting her out completely, is that really the answer?" I could see the worry in her face, the concern that she would lose her daughter too. She wasn't wrong to worry. I had been so consumed with making the right decision for myself, for our future, that I hadn't stopped to think about how this might affect her. Lena loved Ava, just as I did, but unlike me, she had never been fully swept into the pattern of enabling. She had always been the one to hold Ava accountable, the one who would say no when necessary. It was hard for her to see me take such drastic steps. I didn't know how to explain to Lena that this wasn't about love anymore. It was about survival. If I didn't stop Ava now, there would be no stopping her. She would keep taking, keep demanding, keep manipulating until there was nothing left. And that wasn't a future I was willing to live. "I'm sure," I told her quietly. "I don't want to do this, but I have to. Ava's not the daughter we raised anymore. She's someone else. Someone who thinks she can control us, who thinks I owe her something. And I can't keep enabling her. I've already given her everything. I've already sacrificed too much. It's time for her to learn responsibility, and that means she has to face the consequences of her actions. I'm done protecting her from herself." Lena didn't say anything for a long time. She just looked at me, her face full of emotions I couldn't quite read. I knew she was hurting, but I also knew she understood. It was hard to watch our daughter become someone we didn't recognize. It was hard to let go of the hope that one day she'd come around. But this wasn't about hope anymore. It was about doing what was necessary, even if it meant breaking my own heart. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Ava didn't call, didn't text, didn't reach out at all. It was as if she had disappeared completely from our lives. I expected her to come storming through the door any minute, demanding answers, accusing me of everything under the sun, but she didn't. I didn't know if she was planning something, or if she was genuinely taking the time to process what had happened. I didn't care. I had done what I needed to do, and now it was time to live with the consequences. I wasn't prepared for the shock of seeing her again, though. It came a few days after I had made the changes to my will and filed the restraining order. I had spent the morning getting some work done around the house, fixing things I'd put off for far too long, and when I heard the knock on the door, I knew it was only a matter of time before she showed up. Lena was at the store, and I was alone when I opened the door to find Ava standing on the other side. She looked different. Her eyes were puffy, red from crying, and she wasn't wearing her usual confident expression. She looked small, fragile almost. But even though I wanted to believe that this was a sign of regret, I knew better. Ava had never been good at taking responsibility for her actions. She had always deflected, always blamed others. "Ava," I said coldly, my voice firm despite the nervousness gnawing at my insides, "what are you doing here?" Her face twisted into something between a snarl and a grimace, a mix of anger and hurt. "You know why I'm here. she spat. You cut me off, Dad. You cut me off like I'm some stranger. I'm your daughter, for God's sake. I deserve better than this. I felt my anger rising, but I forced myself to remain calm. No, Ava, you don't deserve better than this. You deserve consequences for your actions. You've treated me like a piggy bank for years, and I've let you. But I'm done. You've crossed the line. She stepped closer, her voice trembling now. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just needed help. I needed you, Dad. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. Just give me a chance, please. We can fix this. We can work things out. I stood my ground. No more chances. You've used every chance I've given you, and I won't let you keep doing it. It's over. Ava's face turned pale. You're going to regret this. You don't know what you're doing. Maybe, but I know what I'm not doing anymore. I'm not going to let you manipulate me. I'm not going to let you destroy my peace, my retirement, my marriage. You don't get to control me anymore. The silence between us felt thick, suffocating. Ava stared at me, her expression a mix of disbelief and rage. For the first time, I saw something new in her eyes, fear. The kind of fear someone feels when they realize they've lost their grip on the people they've always relied on. Then she turned, her face red with emotion, and walked away without another word. I watched her go, and for a moment I wondered if I had made the right choice. Had I done the right thing? Could I have handled this better? I didn't have the answers, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't go back. It's strange, the way time moves differently when you're living through a shift like the one I was experiencing. The days after Ava left our doorstep were the hardest I've ever had to endure, and yet, at the same time, they felt like a strange sort of relief. The house was quieter, that had become a constant hum in the background of my life. The pressure of Ava's demands, her threats, her constant need for something from me, was finally gone. But in its place, there was a kind of emptiness, a hollowness I wasn't prepared for. I spent the next few days in a kind of numb daze. I went through the motions, checking the things off my to-do list, but my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't help but replay that day over and over again. The way Ava had stood there, looking at me like she was seeing a stranger, and then the hurt in her voice when she realized I wasn't going to back down. The pain in her eyes as I said goodbye. I had to keep reminding myself that I had done what I had to do. I had set boundaries, real, firm boundaries, and I couldn't allow myself to waver, but the emotional toll was heavy. Lena, as always, was the steady one. She kept telling me that I had done the right thing, that this was the only way to protect myself, protect us. But I could see the way she was struggling too. She'd always had a softer spot for Ava. They had a connection I could never quite understand, and now I could see the weight of that loss in Lena's eyes. She wasn't as vocal about it as I was, but I knew she missed the daughter she had once been close to. This wasn't just about me. This was about the family we had built, the daughter we had raised, and now the reality that that family had fractured beyond repair. It was late one evening when the next blow hit. The phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID and froze. It was Ava's number. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't heard from her since she left, and I was certain she wasn't done with me yet. I wasn't sure if I was ready to deal with her again, but I knew I had no choice. So I took a deep breath and answered. "Dad," Ava's voice came through, shaky and uncertain. "We need to talk." I felt a wave of frustration wash over me, but I kept my tone even. "Ava, there's nothing left to talk about. I've made my decision. I'm not going to keep enabling you, and I'm not going to keep letting you manipulate me." She paused for a moment, and when she spoke again, I could hear the crack in her voice. "You don't understand, Dad. I'm really struggling. I didn't mean to hurt you. I've made so many mistakes, but I don't know how to fix them on my own. I need you." I could hear the desperation in her voice, and for a split second I felt that familiar tug in my chest, the feeling of wanting to make things right for her, of wanting to swoop in and fix everything. But I had already made that mistake too many times. I couldn't be the one to save her anymore. "Ava, I've been there for you. I've helped you, time and time again, but you never learned. You always think you can get away with it, and you manipulate me into giving you what you want. That's not how this works anymore." I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, and I could tell she was struggling to keep her emotions in check. "You don't understand what it's like, Dad," she said quietly. "I don't have anyone else. You're the only person I can rely on. I don't have a job, I can't pay my bills, and I don't know how to fix things on my own. Please just help me one last time." The words felt like a trap, a familiar tactic, and for a moment I was back in that old cycle, feeling guilty, feeling like I should give in. But then I remembered. I remembered the snake. I remembered the years of helping her, only for her to continue taking me for granted. This was the last time. I couldn't keep doing this to myself. "Ava," I said, my voice firmer than before, "I've already helped you more than I should have. I'm not going to keep fixing things for you. You have to take responsibility for yourself. I'm not going to be your safety net anymore. I won't let you destroy everything I've worked for." Her silence was deafening. I thought she might hang up, but instead her voice came back, quieter now, almost defeated. "I don't know what to do anymore." "Then figure it out," I said. "I can't keep doing this for you. You need to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. I can't be your crutch any longer." There was another long pause, and I thought she might finally give up. But then she spoke again, softer, almost as if she was trying to process what I was saying. "You're really serious, aren't you?" I felt the weight of the moment, the finality of it. "Yes, Ava, I'm serious. You need to understand that there are consequences to your actions. I can't keep letting you walk all over me." She didn't say anything else. The line went silent, and I waited, feeling the years of tension between us grow even heavier. This was it. I had drawn the line, and I wasn't going to back down. When she finally hung up, I sat in the quiet of the house, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. I had done what I had to do, but that didn't make it any easier. The silence felt overwhelming, like a cold wind blowing through the space that Ava had once filled with her demands and manipulations. Lena came into the room after I hung up the phone, her face tired. She could see it on my face, the strain of the conversation. She sat beside me, her hand finding mine, and for a long time we didn't speak. We didn't need to. We both knew that things had changed forever, that the daughter we once knew was gone. What remained was a stranger, a woman who had become so consumed by her own needs and selfishness that she couldn't see the damage she had done. "Do you think she'll ever understand?" Lena finally asked, her voice full of uncertainty. I looked at her, and for the first time I realized how deeply this had hurt her too. This wasn't just about Ava and me. This was about all of us, the family we had built, the relationship we had tried to preserve. But as much as I wanted to believe that Ava would eventually come to her senses, I knew that I had done everything I could. "I don't know, Lena," I said, my voice quiet. "I really don't. But I know I can't keep sacrificing myself for her. I've done that long enough." She squeezed my hand, and I could see the understanding in her eyes. We had done the right thing, even if it didn't feel that way yet. The road ahead would be difficult, and maybe Ava would never understand. But at least we would have peace. We could finally live our lives without the constant fear of another crisis, another emotional manipulation. I wasn't sure where Ava would go from here. I didn't know if she would ever come back into our lives. But what I did know was that I had taken control of my own future. I had stopped letting her use me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of freedom. It wasn't the kind of freedom I had expected. It wasn't the peaceful kind of retirement I had dreamed of. But it was freedom, nonetheless. The days after Ava's call passed in a blur of quiet routine. I went back to my daily life, work, household chores, the little things that always filled my time, and tried to ignore the feeling of emptiness that lingered. I kept telling myself that I had done the right thing, that cutting Ava off was necessary for my own well-being. But there was always a nagging doubt in the back of my mind, a question that lingered like a whisper. Had I done the right thing? Lena and I spent more time together in those days. We didn't talk much about Ava. There wasn't much to say. What was left to discuss? But we found ways to fill the silence between us. We went for walks in the evenings, something we hadn't done in years. We sat outside on the porch, watching the sunset over the neighborhood, listening to the soft hum of life around us. For a while, it felt like we were reclaiming something we had lost, something simple and peaceful. I think Lena was trying to be strong for me, trying to fill the void left by Ava's absence. But I knew it wasn't easy for her either. She missed her daughter, the girl she had raised, the girl who had once come to her with a smile and a hug. Now, all we had were memories of the daughter we'd hoped Ava would become. It was late one evening when the phone rang again. I looked at the caller ID, and my heart sank. It was Ava. I had known this was coming. I had been waiting for it. I didn't want to answer. Part of me was afraid that I might cave, that I might give in to her manipulation again. But another part of me, the part that had finally found a sense of peace, knew this had to be the last time. I couldn't keep letting her control me. I took a deep breath and picked up the phone. "Ava?" I said, my voice steady but cold. "What is it?" There was a long pause before she spoke. I could hear her breathing, a soft, ragged sound that immediately told me something was wrong. "Dad," she finally said, her voice quiet, almost broken. "Can we talk? I need to apologize for everything. I know I've done a lot of terrible things, but I'm really struggling. Please, I don't know what to do anymore. I need your help." I felt a twist of something in my chest. Guilt? Maybe? Or maybe it was just the remnants of the love I still had for her, the daughter who had once been so full of life and promise. But I pushed it down. I couldn't let myself feel that anymore. "Ava," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "you've had plenty of chances. I've helped you more times than I can count, and every time it's been the same. You've never learned from it. And now you're calling me again, asking for help. You've crossed a line that I can't come back from." There was a long silence, and I could feel her on the other end, her emotions shifting between anger and desperation. I knew she was probably crying, but I couldn't let that sway me. I had made my decision. "I'm not going to keep helping you, Ava. I've already taken the steps I needed to take. The will is changed, and the trust is set up for Liam and Emma. I won't give you anything more." "Please, Dad," she begged, her voice now breaking. "I don't know how to fix this. I'm so sorry. I know I've hurt you, and I don't know how to make it right. I don't know how to live without your support. You're the only one who's ever been there for me." I closed my eyes, trying to steady myself. I could hear the manipulation in her voice, the desperation that I had learned to recognize over the years. It wasn't real. This wasn't about her changing. It was about her needing something from me again. "Ava, you've never once taken responsibility for your actions. This is not about me helping you. It's about you finally taking responsibility for your own life. I can't be your crutch anymore. You've manipulated me for years, and I'm not going to let you keep doing it. You have to figure this out on your own." There was another silence, this one lasting even longer. I could hear her sniffling, but I didn't feel sorry for her anymore. It was a pattern, a cycle I had let her drag me into for far too long. I was done. "Dad?" she said finally, her voice small. "I don't know how to do that. I don't know where to start. I'm scared." I felt a flicker of something, sympathy perhaps, but I knew better than to give in. Sympathy had gotten me nowhere before. "Ava, I can't be the one to fix this anymore. You have to do it yourself. And if you want to start making things right, it starts with accepting that you've made mistakes and facing the consequences. You can't keep running away from them." She didn't respond at first, and I thought she might hang up, but then she said the words I had been expecting. "I'll never forgive you for this, Dad. You'll regret this. I'll make sure of it." I felt a cold wave of clarity wash over me. The manipulation, the threats, the guilt-tripping, it had all led to this. Ava had finally shown me who she had become. It wasn't the daughter I had raised. It was someone else. And that someone wasn't my responsibility anymore. "I'm not afraid of your threats anymore, Ava," I said quietly. "I've made my peace with my decision. You need to make peace with yours." I could feel the weight of her anger on the other end of the line, but I didn't let it affect me. I wasn't the one who had crossed the line. She had. I was finally standing up for myself, and I wasn't going to back down. "I'm done, Ava," I said, my voice firm. "Goodbye." I hung up the phone, the finality of it ringing in my ears. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. It wasn't the peace I'd expected. There was no sense of relief in cutting her off, no joy in ending our relationship. But there was clarity. I had taken back control of my life, and that was something I had needed to do for far too long. For the next few days, I didn't hear from her. There were no calls, no messages, no angry texts, and honestly, I felt relieved. It was as if a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Lena noticed the change in me, the quietness that had settled over our home. We spent more time together, enjoying each other's company without the constant tension that had defined the past few years. I wasn't sure what the future held for Ava and me. I didn't know if she would ever come around or if we would ever have a relationship again. But I did know this. I had finally taken a stand, and no matter what happened next, I had reclaimed control over my own life. It wasn't a perfect resolution. It wasn't easy, but it was the right one. The days after the call with Ava stretched out in a strange, quiet rhythm. It felt like the calm after a storm, but the air was thick with a sense of finality. I had spent so many years caught in the cycle of Ava's demands, trying to make things right for her, and now, for the first time in what felt like forever, there was peace. Not the kind of peace I had expected, not the easy kind that comes with resolution. No, this was a more complicated peace, one that came from the weight of the choice I had made and the understanding that things between us could never go back to what they once were. I didn't hear from Ava for a week. The phone sat silent on the kitchen counter, and every time it rang, I felt a brief flicker of hope mixed with dread. I couldn't shake the feeling that she might call, that she might try to fix things, apologize for everything she'd said. But as the days went on, the silence stretched longer, and I found myself starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, this was the end. Lena and I had settled into a kind of routine in those days. I could see the relief in her too, though it was more subtle. We hadn't realized how much Ava's constant presence, her manipulations, had affected us. It had been draining, both emotionally and mentally, and now there was space to breathe. We found ourselves reconnecting in ways we hadn't in years. We took walks together in the evenings, our conversations flowing easily. The tension that used to hang over us like a heavy fog had lifted, and for the first time in a long time, we could talk freely, without the ever-present worry that we were one bad decision away from another crisis. It wasn't perfect. I wasn't naive enough to think that everything had suddenly fallen into place, but it was an improvement. It was a small victory, one I was beginning to appreciate. I spent more time in the garden, tinkering with the small projects I had been too busy to finish. It felt good to get my hands dirty again, to focus on something simple and tangible. Every moment spent in the garden was a small reclamation of my life, something I could control after years of feeling like I had no say in how things went. Then, just as I was starting to relax into this new rhythm, the phone rang again. I wasn't expecting it, but when I saw the caller ID, my heart sank. It was Ava. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, unsure of whether I should answer or let it go to voicemail. I had spent days telling myself I was done, that I couldn't keep allowing her to drag me back into the chaos. But something in me stirred, the part of me that was still a father, still connected to the daughter I had raised. Despite everything, I still loved her, and the love made it hard to walk away completely. I picked up the phone. "Ava," I said, keeping my voice as steady as possible. My heart was racing, but I wasn't going to let her see that. I couldn't afford to let her have the control anymore. "Dad," she said, and her voice sounded strange. It wasn't the angry, defensive tone I'd heard before. It wasn't the self-entitled, manipulative voice that had become so familiar. It was different, soft, almost vulnerable. "Can we talk? I need to apologize." I didn't know what to say. It felt like a trap, like she was trying to worm her way back into my good graces with a few well-placed words. But I couldn't ignore the genuine uncertainty in her voice. I could hear the break in her words, the hesitation that spoke volumes about how much she was struggling. Was this the Ava I had been waiting for, the one who finally understood the damage she had done? Or was it just another attempt to manipulate me into giving her what she wanted? "You're going to have to do better than that," I said, my tone firmer now, the anger starting to bubble beneath the surface. "You don't get to just apologize and expect everything to be okay. You've hurt me, Ava. For years you've hurt me, and I've let you do it. But that ends now. If you want to talk, it's not just about saying you're sorry. You need to show me you've changed. You need to show me that you're ready to take responsibility for your actions." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear Ava's breathing, slow and steady, It felt like she was weighing my words, trying to figure out how to respond. I waited, but I didn't expect her to understand. Not fully. She never had. "I know," she said finally, her voice small. "I get it now. I've made so many mistakes, and I'm sorry for everything. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I want to fix things, Dad. I know I can't undo the past, but I want to try. I need to learn how to stand on my own, how to fix my life without running back to you every time things go wrong. I don't expect you to believe me right now, but I need you to know that I'm trying." I swallowed hard, the words hanging in the air between us. She wasn't asking for my help anymore. She wasn't demanding money or making threats. She was admitting she had been wrong, and for the first time in a long time, I thought she might actually be telling the truth. It didn't make what she had done okay, but maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for healing. A small chance, but a chance nonetheless. "You don't have to fix everything right now," I said, my voice softer now. "But you do need to take responsibility for your actions. And that means not coming back to me when things get tough, not expecting me to clean up your messes. You have to learn how to do that for yourself." Ava was quiet for a moment before she spoke again. "I will. I promise, Dad. I'll prove it to you." I wanted to believe her, but part of me was still wary. It wasn't just about what she said. It was about actions. I had been down this road before, and I knew better than to think words alone could heal the wounds that had been created over years of manipulation. But for the first time I felt a flicker of hope. Real hope. Not the kind I had clung to in the past, when I was desperately trying to fix something that wasn't mine to fix. "I'll believe it when I see it, Ava," I said quietly, "but I'm willing to give you that chance." She thanked me, and we hung up. I sat there for a long time, the phone still pressed to my ear, staring at nothing in particular. It was hard to know what to think, but I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, cautious optimism. I didn't know if Ava could change, and I didn't know if we could ever have the relationship we once had, but I was willing to let her try. I had spent so many years trying to fix things for her, trying to make up for her mistakes, that I had lost sight of what it meant to let her take responsibility. Now it was her turn to figure it out. It was her turn to prove she could stand on her own. Lena came into the room shortly after. She had been quiet during the call, but now she looked at me with a mix of hope and uncertainty. "What happened?" she asked gently. I looked at her, a slow, cautious smile spreading across my face. "I don't know. I think she might be ready to change, but we'll see." Lena nodded, her expression softening. "It's a start, David. That's all we can ask for." And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe we'd taken a step forward. It wasn't going to be easy, and it certainly wouldn't be quick. But we had a chance. And for the first time in years, that was enough. The weeks that followed were a strange mix of hope and skepticism. Ava's attempt to apologize had been genuine. At least that's what I tried to convince myself. But even as I allowed myself to believe in her words, I couldn't shake the doubt that always seemed to creep into my mind. I had seen this cycle before. The grand apologies, the promises to change, the desperate attempts to make things right. I had always been too quick to believe that things could go back to normal, to believe that my daughter, the girl I had raised, could somehow return to the way she once was. But this time I told myself I wasn't going to be fooled. I couldn't afford to be. I had spent too many years enabling her, too many years watching her make the same mistakes over and over again. This time I was going to let her prove herself. Ava had called once more after that first conversation, and the conversation was different. She wasn't asking for money, she wasn't demanding help, and she wasn't threatening to take the grandchildren away from us. For the first time, she sounded like she was trying to be independent. She talked about looking for a job and taking steps to get her life together, things I hadn't heard her say in years. She even mentioned enrolling in a course that would help her gain some professional skills, a step I thought I would never see her take. I listened, cautiously, holding my breath as she spoke, but I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that it was too soon to believe her, too soon to believe in her change. And then, one morning, I woke up to a message. It was from Ava, and it was different from the others. It wasn't an emergency. It wasn't a plea for help. It was a simple message. Dad, I've got an interview tomorrow. I just wanted to let you know. I'm doing this on my own. Thanks for believing in me. It was a small thing. Small and seemingly insignificant, but it hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just a message about a job interview. It was a sign that she was finally taking steps to stand on her own. That message felt like a breath of fresh air, something I hadn't experienced in so long. Maybe there was hope for her after all. Maybe she was finally beginning to understand what it meant to take responsibility, to stand on her own 2 feet. But I couldn't get ahead of myself. I had to wait and see what would happen. Lena, of course, noticed the change in me. She could always tell when I was holding something back, when I was trying to convince myself of something I wasn't quite sure of. I didn't want to get her hopes up, and I certainly didn't want to talk about it too much. But as the days passed and Ava's attempts at independence continued, I couldn't ignore the fact that something was shifting. It wasn't just the phone calls or the messages. It was the way she seemed to be living her life now, slower, more measured, more thoughtful. For the first time, I saw that she was starting to prioritize things differently. She wasn't calling me every other day, asking for money or trying to get me to fix things for her. It was like she was starting to see the world in a new light, a light where she had to take responsibility for her actions and the consequences that came with them. But then, just as I was beginning to allow myself to hope, things got complicated again. One evening I came home from work to find Lena sitting at the kitchen table, her face pale and serious. "What's wrong?" I asked, the concern growing in my chest as I sat down across from her. "I got a call today," Lena said, her voice steady but quiet. It was from Peter. I froze. The name alone was enough to bring back all the anger and frustration I had tried to bury. Peter, Ava's husband, the one I had always felt uneasy about. The one who never seemed to care about anything except his own comfort. The one who had used Ava just as much as she had used me. "Why is he calling you?" I asked, trying to keep the edge of anger out of my voice. Lena shook her head, her eyes filled with concern. "He said that Ava's been having a hard time, that she's been feeling overwhelmed with everything, her job search, the course she started, everything. And he's worried. He said she's not eating, that she's barely sleeping, and that she doesn't know how to handle the pressure." A knot formed in my stomach. I didn't know how to respond. Peter's words meant nothing to me, but I also knew that if Ava was struggling, I had to at least consider it. She had tried. I had seen that. But the possibility of her falling back into old habits, the thought of her letting everything unravel again, filled me with dread. "She's still my daughter, David," Lena said quietly, as if reading my thoughts. "Maybe we should check in on her. Maybe we can help." The old part of me wanted to say yes, wanted to rush to Ava's side and fix everything for her. But the other part of me, the part that had finally learned to set boundaries, knew I couldn't do it. I couldn't go back to the way things were. "I can't, Lena," I said, my voice steady but firm. "I've already helped her. I've already given her everything. If she's struggling, it's because she hasn't learned how to handle things on her own, and I won't keep enabling her. She has to learn." Lena looked at me for a long moment before nodding slowly. She understood, but the worry was still there, in her eyes and in her voice when she spoke again. "I just hate seeing her like this. I hate that she's struggling. She's our daughter, and I don't know how to help her without enabling her." I reached out and took her hand, trying to offer her the comfort I was struggling to give myself. "I know, but we've done everything we can. We've taught her what we can. Now it's up to her." For a while the silence between us hung heavy. I could feel the weight of the decision I had made, the responsibility of it. It was the right thing to do. I knew that. But it didn't make it any easier. A few days later, I got another message from Ava. It was simple, just a few words. "I didn't get the job, but I'm not giving up. I'll keep going." I sat there for a moment staring at the screen. Ava was starting to understand something. She was starting to see that life wasn't about getting everything handed to you. It was about failing and trying again. It wasn't easy, but I saw growth in her, real growth, and maybe that was all I could ask for. Maybe it had been worth it. I wasn't sure what would happen next. I didn't know if Ava would keep trying, or if she would fall back into her old ways. But for the first time I felt like I had done the right thing. I had set boundaries. I had let go, and I had given her the chance to grow up. In the end, that was all I could do. The weeks that followed Ava's message felt like a slow, steady march forward. I had told myself I would stand firm, that I had done everything I could to help her. And I had, at least that's what I kept telling myself. But even though I wasn't enabling her anymore, there was still a constant pull on my heart, like a thread that refused to break. I wanted to believe in her. I wanted to believe that the growth I was seeing was real, that this time she really was changing. But there was always that fear, the fear that I had made the wrong decision, that she would fall again, and that I would be left standing in the wreckage of what was left of our relationship. Lena noticed the shift in me too. I had been quiet, lost in thought more often than not. I couldn't help it. Ava was still my daughter, and no matter how many times I told myself I was done, I couldn't simply erase the love I had for her. Every time she failed, every time she stumbled, a part of me couldn't help but ache for her. But I had to stay strong. I had to keep reminding myself that she needed to do this on her own, and I couldn't be the one to fix it for her. One evening, I came home from work, the door to the house creaking as I opened it. The familiar smell of dinner filled the air, and I saw Lena in the kitchen, chopping vegetables. She looked up and gave me a soft smile, the kind that spoke volumes without saying a word. It was comforting in a way I couldn't describe, like I could rest in that smile, even when everything else felt uncertain. "How was work?" she asked, her voice warm and steady. "Same as always," I replied, setting down my bag and rubbing my hands across my face. "But I've been thinking about Ava." Lena set the knife down and turned toward me, her brow furrowed slightly. "What about her?" I hesitated. I hadn't really spoken about her much since the last phone call. I had kept it in, kept the thoughts and worries locked inside, and for the most part Lena had respected that. But now, I was finally starting to crack open the door I'd kept shut for so long. "She's still reaching out," I said quietly, lowering myself into a chair at the kitchen table, "and every time she does, I feel like I'm being pulled back in. I want to help her. I want to be there for her." Lena walked over, sitting down beside me. "But you're not sure you should," she said, understanding without me having to explain much. "David, you've been through so much with her already. You've done everything you could. She's the one who has to make the change now, not you." I sighed, running my hand through my hair. I know that, but it doesn't stop the worry. She's still my daughter, and I can't just turn off that part of me that wants to fix things for her. Lena took my hand gently, her touch grounding me. "I know, David, but sometimes love means letting go. It means trusting her to find her own way, even when it's hard. You've given her the chance. You've given her the tools. Now it's up to her to use them." I looked into her eyes, searching for the clarity I so desperately needed. What if she doesn't? What if she keeps making the same mistakes? What if she never learns? Lena squeezed my hand, her voice soft but firm. "Then you'll have to accept it. It's not easy. It's never easy. But you've done your part. You can't carry her anymore. You can't live her life for her." Her words echoed in my mind long after she went to bed that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had truly done the right thing. I thought back to those years when I had been there for Ava, when I had been her safety net, her protector. The idea of letting her go, of trusting her to stand on her own, was terrifying. What if she fell? What if she didn't have the strength to pick herself up? But what choice did I have? I couldn't keep living in fear of her mistakes, afraid to cut the string that had tied me to her. I had spent so many years trying to save her, trying to fix her life, but all that had done was teach her that I would always be there, no matter how many times she failed. I had to let her fail now. It wasn't about being cold or unloving. It was about giving her the space to grow. The next morning, as I was sipping my coffee, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Ava. I froze for a moment before picking it up. "Dad?" Her voice came through, hesitant and unsure. "Can we talk?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady the sudden rush of emotion that flooded through me. I knew this moment was coming. I didn't know what to expect, but I had to be ready for whatever it was. I had to stay strong. "What's going on, Ava?" I asked, keeping my tone calm, measured. I just wanted to say thank you," she said, her voice quieter now. I know things haven't been easy between us, and I know I've messed up a lot, but I wanted to thank you for everything you've done, for always being there, for always helping me. I don't know where I'd be without you. I really mean it, Dad." I felt a lump form in my throat, but I swallowed it down. "Ava, I've always done what I thought was best for you, but I can't keep fixing things for you. You have to take responsibility for your life. You've been given a chance, and now it's up to you to make it count." There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, steady but heavy, like she was struggling to find the right words. "I know," she said finally. "I know. I've been thinking about everything, and I know I need to do this on my own. I don't want you to have to fix things for me anymore. I'm ready to make changes, Dad. I'm really ready." I closed my eyes, holding my breath. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment I had hoped would come. Was it real? Was she really ready? "I'm proud of you," I said softly. "But remember, it's not just about words. It's about actions. You need to prove it, and if you do, I'll be here. But I can't be the one to fix everything anymore." "I understand," she said, her voice steady. "I will. I promise." I sat there for a moment, letting the weight of her words sink in. For the first time in years, I felt like I was having an honest conversation with my daughter. It wasn't perfect. There was still so much work to be done. But maybe this was the first real step toward healing. After we hung up, I sat in the silence, letting myself process the conversation. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if Ava would follow through or if she would fall back into old habits. But for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to believe that change was possible. Maybe she could do this. Maybe she could find her own way, and maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild what had been broken between us. It was a small hope, but it was enough for now. Enough to let me believe that in the end, it was all worth it. Life often requires us to make difficult decisions, especially when it comes to relationships with those we love. A key lesson is that setting boundaries is not only necessary for our own well-being, but also for the growth of others. While it's natural to want to help, especially those who rely on us, enabling unhealthy behavior or continually sacrificing our own peace can lead to resentment and dependency. It's important to recognize that true love sometimes means stepping back and allowing others to face the consequences of their actions. Letting go doesn't mean you don't care. It means you're giving them the chance to grow and learn responsibility. Life isn't always about fixing things for others. Sometimes it's about letting them figure it out for themselves, even if it's difficult to watch. Trust that people can change, but only if they're willing to take the steps to do so. And remember, it's okay to prioritize your own needs, happiness, and peace. Ultimately, taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's essential for being able to offer genuine support when it's truly needed. Let go when necessary and trust the process of growth, both for you and the people in your life.